What's up guys, it's Phil, and today I am going to show you how to make a set of dual sliding barn doors. So these are pretty cool, and I have had a lot of issues with dual sliding barn doors in the past. And so if you are going to be doing a DIY sliding barn door like this project, I'm going to touch a lot of the stuff that you might not realize you might run into, and this will save you a lot of heartache, a lot of time, and hopefully a lot of cash. So when making dual sliding barn doors, it is extremely important that everything is square and level. So if you have a carpenter's square, if you know how to check for square using a tape measure, that is super duper awesome. The other advantage you have is that on this project, we're not going to be doing a door with like mortise and tenons and a real solid wood door. Instead, we're going to be using a super premium hardwood plywood for the core and building a frame around it, because then we don't have to worry about wood expansion and contraction and stuff like that, and we can focus on making it pretty. Just my disclaimer, this is a woodworking project, which means you are going to need some woodworking tools, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Always follow the safety precautions, and you are responsible for your safety in using these tools. I may or may not use them properly because I have done certain things to my tools to make them work for me, and if that doesn't exactly fit your safety standards, hey, go for it, be safe, do what you want to do in your shop. I'm not responsible for your safety. Lastly, this is a DIY project and it is going to look beautiful and awesome in your home, but it is not exactly a professional level project, which is great if you're a DIYer and you're just coming to this video because you want to see how to make some super awesome dual barn doors and get some tips and tricks from a professional. Great, this is the video for you. If you're looking for something a little more professional, this isn't really going to be it. This isn't the kind of thing that you need to be trying to sell to people to put in their homes, but for a DIY project it is great. You can also tweak the plans very, very easily to fit your space. So let's get started. Now let's talk supplies. The first thing you're going to need is 2 sheets of plywood. Now I'm doing that because my doors, the total width of the door opening is 55 inches. So I can't really get away with using a 48-inch board. There's just not enough room on the sides. Unfortunately, that means I am going to have some leftover plywood, but that's okay. I'll give them to my wife to make some pretty signs for our house or something like that. So for me, it's not going to be wasted. For you, though, if there's a different way to kind of measure out everything and make sure your plywood's going to fit, maybe you can get away with 1 sheet with a smaller opening. I unfortunately can't because it's just outside of that threshold. If the doorway was about 3 to 4 inches smaller, I could get away with 1 sheet. So it's unfortunate, but it happens. You're also going to need some trim boards. Now my door is going to be painted, so I went down to my local home center and bought finger jointed pine boards. Now I've talked about this before. They are pre-primed. They're slightly off of 3/4 of an inch. So I mean they're like a 32nd of an inch smaller, but it's not making that big of a deal. They do have rounded edges already and they are ready for paint, which is great. Also, finger jointed trim boards do not have the tendency to warp and twist like the other garbage from Sweden that you're going to pick up at those home stores. So instead of getting premium pine, which is way too expensive, instead of getting common boards or MDF trim boards, because the MDF will swell if you happen to be in a high moisture environment like a bathroom or something, get finger jointed prime. FJ prime is usually what it says on the tags. Go ahead and get some finger jointed pre-primed trim boards. That's what you're going to need. That's going to be the best for this project. So for my doors, I picked up 8 1x3s at 8 foot long. I also picked up 2 1x6s at 8 foot long. There's going to be a little bit of extra for that, but that's going to be the very top and bottom of my frame, so I have a lot of room to hang those sliding door hangers. And for the cross bracing, I went ahead and picked up 4 more 1x3s. Those are going to give me just that little extra bit of wood. I may have overbought, but it's always better to overbuy and return than it is to underbuy and you have to go back to the home store again. I also picked up some awesome dark gray paint. This stuff is super, super cool and I cannot wait to use it. Now let's talk tools. For cutting your plywood, you can either have that done for you at the home store because the plywood edge is not going to be showing on this project, so they can be kind of precise. It doesn't have to be exact. If you don't want to have it done at the home store, you can use a table saw for that, or you can use a ripping saw, such as the Craig Jig, or the Milwaukee, or the Festool track saw systems. I have some links down below. You can check some of those things out. I'm going to be using a table saw, but really, for this project, just get it cut to size at your home store. The next thing you're going to need is a chop saw or a miter saw. Now really a miter saw is going to be best for this anyway because we're going to be putting some angles on it. But chop saws are pretty easy to get. Most of them do different angles, so you should be good to go there. Go ahead and pick one of those up. That's how we're going to chop everything to length. You're probably going to want a nail gun. 18 gauge brad nailers, especially the Ryobi 1 system, those are really good to use. That's what I use professionally. So go ahead and pick up some of those. Some 18 gauge brad nails in 1 or 1.5 inch lengths. That's how we're going to secure all of the boards and build the frame. We're going to want some wood glue because you got to stick everything together. You probably want some wood filler, or I'm actually going to be using drywall spackle because it dries a little bit quicker, it doesn't tend to crack as easily, and it's much more easy to sand. And since mine is going to be painted, it's not that big of a deal for me. If it's going to be stained, you should probably be using a stainable, sandable wood filler, but with paint, I actually recommend drywall spackle. Obviously, a pen or pencil and a tape measure are going to be needed for this project, and more crucially, you want to have a carpenter's square. Specifically, a large speed square would be great. Any other straight edge you might have would be nice, but most of those things we're just going to be using to check foursquare on this piece. But I have a little trick I'm going to show you later, since we're using plywood, that's going to make that a whole heck of a lot easier. Now I've got a shop vac hooked up to all of my saws for dust collection. I don't have my major dust collection system in yet, but that's okay. Most of you guys probably don't have a full-on dust collection system either. So try to mitigate your dust inhalation, wear a mask if you need to, do your cutting in a well-ventilated area, or simply hook it up to a shop vac. They sell small adapters right there at the home store, right there next to the shop vacs, that you can check your tool sizes for all their output ports, connect those, you get your own homemade dust collection system. It's pretty awesome. And that should be it for the tools. Alright, with that, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing you want to do is get everything cut down and do all your math. Now, I figured out the openings of the casing because I just don't care for measuring out to get it to fit and all that kind of stuff. My door is going to fit exactly around the casing, so I measured everything on the outside, and I'm going to adjust my measurements from there. So to figure out what I'm going to do is pretty simple. I'm going to have a plywood core for each door, and each of these is going to have a frame all the way around it, as well as a face frame and some decoration. So to figure out what my cuts need to be, for the plywood, the first thing I need to do is look at, I have a distance of 55 inches. I'm going to divide that by 2. So let me do some quick math in my head here. And if I have 55 inches, and that divides by 2, that's going to be 27.5 inches. But that is the full length. I also am going to be using a 3/4 inch and 3/4 inch thick frame on each side. So these pieces need to be accounted for. So from this, I also need to subtract 1.5, which is 2 times the 3/4 inch. That's going to be 3/4 inch on this side, 3/4 inch on this side is 1.5. So now I need 26 inches across this top edge for both doors. Now my height is going to be a little bit different because I have 98 inches total. I want to be a 1/2 inch off the floor, so I already know that's 97.5. I also have these floor flanges that are going to hold this door in place and prevent it from rocking back and forth. So with that, I actually want to add an extra 1/2 inch to that. So now I'm down to 97. 97 inches gives me a pretty good amount of room, but once again, I'm going to have a small little bit of frame up here and a small little bit of frame down here. So 97 now becomes 95.5. Okay? because I subtracted 1.5 inches from the top and the bottom. So I now know that I need to cut my plywood into 26 by 95.5, and that is going to be 2 of those. Now what's cool about this is 95.5 is just shy of 96, which is 8 foot. So since this is just over 8 foot, all of this, the math that I've just done, is going to make up for it, where really I'm actually only cutting 1/2 inch off of my plywood. Depending on your door and the size that you make it, you may or may not wind up being able to do it that way, but as you can see, this here, the 26, is why I'm having to use 2 sheets instead of just 1. So once we know the frame that goes around the outside, I can actually start working on the inner faceboards here. So I know that we have 26 and 95.5 as our maximum dimensions here, so to make that fit, I'm going to do 1x6s on the top and bottom, and 1x3s going up and down the rails here, and as the stile's going across the middle that way. I'm also going to use 1x3s to make my cross members this way, but that's going to be one of the last steps that we do as far as this whole face frame goes. So for now, I know that I can do the 1x6, I can cut at 26 inches, and there's going to be 2 of those per face frame per door for the front. And then for my 1x3s, I'm going to have to figure out this distance and this distance. So let's do that real quick. So 95.5, subtracting 11, because we have 5.5 here and 5.5 here. So 95.5 subtracting 11 gives me 84.5. I'm gonna have 2 of those. Then I've got these pieces going across here. Now 1x3s, as we know, are 2.5 inches or 2.5 inches. So I'm gonna have 26 minus 2.5 times 2, which is 5, is 21. So these are gonna be 21 inches across. And I'm gonna have 2 of those as well. Cross beams I'm not gonna worry about yet because that's an angled cut, so I'm gonna use whatever cutoffs I have from all of these 2x6s to do those. So the front of each door is gonna be 2 26 1x6s, 2 84.5 1x3s, and 2 21-inch 1x3s. All of this per door, so 2 doors. Now let's figure out the back. The 1x6s we're going to have also at 26 inches, I mean top and bottom there. 1x3 at 84.5 times 2 of those, and also 1x3 at 21 times 2 of those. The back is not going to have the cross beams, so that's it. We're done for the back. Again, all of this, 2 doors, so we have that times 2. All right, so let's get cutting. Now before I go any farther, when you cut the frames for this, the rails need to be 1.5 inches longer than the full length, whereas the stiles are just going to be the exact length. So my stiles are going to be 26 inches, whereas my rails are going to be the full 97 inches. So remember that, because that needs to compensate for the extra distance that the stiles are going to cover. now everything is dry fit. I'm gonna pull it all apart, glue it, nail it down. So at this point, I've got the inner frame on the face and the back both put in place. Everything is secured, and I'm gonna start filling some holes on that in a minute. But before we do that, the last step to framing this door is to actually do the outer frame that we talked about first in this video. Now, to figure this out, the reason I didn't have this on my cut list earlier is because it can vary just slightly, so it's better to just do it all based off the door so you get a nice tight fit for your final product. So let me show you what I've done here. I've taken my pieces, they're going to be the sides and the tops for my outer frame. I went ahead and measured this length to be 95.5 because that's what this is from top to bottom. So I know the length is fine on this one. But I actually ripped it down to just about 2¼ inches. It's really about a 1/16 less than that, but that's the thickness of my door. So these pre-primed strips, like I said, are not exactly 3/4 of an inch, so I'm about a 1/16 of an inch off from a full quarter overall. So instead of 2¼ I've ripped it down to just a little bit less than that, and that gives me a seamless fit from the front to back across the board this way. 95.5 inches is the perfect length, so now that piece fits perfectly right there on the edge. So I'm going to cut 2 of those, I'm going to glue them, nail them in place, and then we move on to the front piece. Now the front piece is a little more complicated. You can see what I've done is rip down another piece to the same width, so my table saw is set at that width so that everything will be the same on both doors. However, what I want to do is overlap the end grain here. Okay, so I'm going to cut this nice and flush, set the end grain there, come all the way down to the bottom and mark where it needs to be cut. So this is now where I need to cut, and that's going to be about 27.5 inches, but again, these are slightly thinner, so I'm not exactly sure what this measurement's going to be. So it's easier to just set it right against the thing and measure from the top to bottom, and you can see my mark is exactly perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these, and once I get both of these cut, get them installed, make sure the nails go all the way around, be good to go. So at this stage, everything is put together. Now I just have to start filling everything, sanding everything, and then these babies are ready for paint. Now you want to hear that secret I was talking about of what makes these doors so easy? Check this out. Look at how perfectly straight these doors are. They are awesome. The reason that this becomes so easy to do is that most of the plywood that you purchase is going to already have a very, very straight edge from the factory. So when you are ripping your plywood, as long as you keep a nice straight edge throughout that whole rip, you're going to wind up with a very square, very straight core to start with. The finger jointed pine, my personal choice, since again we're going to be painting this one, is extremely straight. For the most part, you don't have any sort of bend, and if you do, you can usually get the bend out, but it almost never warps, it almost never twists. It will sometimes have a bow, but usually, about 99% of the time, it doesn't. Those two things in combination are what make this so easy to do. So, some simple, precise, and good cuts keep everything square, so you've already got a nice square core to build on, versus if you had a really crappy sheet of plywood, or if you were trying to build this as more of a traditional door with panels, that's a lot harder to keep square, especially on these really big barn doors. My floor isn't even level, and this thing is sitting straight up on its edge, and when I was working earlier, I had nothing supporting the piece. It was just standing up on its own edge. That's how straight these doors are. The advantage to that means it's going to take very, very little to clean them up and to get a nice seamless close when the doors are actually hanging. Plus, I know everything is the exact same size because all of this lumber that I bought at the home store was already pretty much the same. I just had to mill a couple little pieces here and there, make some tweaks, and you're good to go. So if you don't have a straight edge to start with, go ahead and make yourself one using a router sled or using a sled for your table saw or doing whatever it is you need to do, a track saw maybe. Get that first straight edge, which is why when I cut these down by only 1/2 inch at the very top, I went back and double checked to make sure that everything was still square. The other way to do that is to measure from top to bottom, right to left on both sides and make sure that you have the exact same measurement. With this one, it's not really so necessary because I already know that these things are perfect because I started with a core that was perfect. I just measured, they're exactly what I thought they were. That's what makes this such a quick and easy project compared to doing some other doors. So now I'm going to start filling. So for most of the holes I'm going to be using this spackling paste. It's dry decks with dry time indicator, goes on pink, turns white. It's pretty easy. It also sands extremely easy. I do have one major crack that I'm going to use Bondo wood filler. This is a wood colored Bondo. I don't know how to explain what Bondo is, but when mixed properly, it actually cures within about 10 to 15 minutes, which is nice. So I've got one deep cut over here where I chunked it out when I was trying to use the hand planer to correct a little bit of a mistake that I'd made, and I made it 10 times worse. The spackling paste is going to fill in all the nail holes and also the wood grain that's showing on the very top edges of the sides of the outer frame. So I'm going to go ahead and start filling all of this. That's going to take a very long and annoying time, so I'm not going to make you watch that. Alright, now while these doors are drying, I'm going to go ahead and do my header. Now my header is an 8-foot long 1x4. 1x4 is actually 3/4 inch thick and 3.5 inches wide. 96 inches long is 8 foot, and that's exactly what I want because for this particular project, my track and my header are only going to be 8 foot. So you usually want to match your header to your barn doors, whether you're staining it or in my case painting it, and also in the length to your track. So that's it, guys. Those barn doors are super awesome and actually super easy. So if you're looking for something really cool like that, this is a really good way to do it. Please feel free to adapt the math and the design to your style and make it fit your space. So hopefully that video is awesome. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe, hit the little like button, ding the bell and turn on the notifications, and go ahead and share this crap on social media. Why? Because that's the only way I'm going to get any bigger, and I'm just begging you for it at this point. If you want to support this channel, go ahead and click on those Amazon links below or in any of my other videos, buy some of the stuff that I recommend, or just use my link to get to Amazon and start shopping. Fill your cart up and buy a whole bunch of crap, because I get a couple pennies for everything you buy, and that'll help support this channel. Or email me and I'll send you my Venmo and you can send me $5. Why? I don't know. Just cuz. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. It's really freaking humid, so I'm gonna go inside now. Bye.